Here's the thing about diets. When someone says diet, as in diet and exercise, what does it actually mean? According to Webster's dictionary, a diet is food and drink regularly provided or consumed. So, by definition, as long as you're eating and drinking, you are on a diet. When most people say diet, they're implying they are either restricting calories or restricting certain foods. So, when a doctor tells their patient, in order for you to lose weight, you need to diet and exercise, what exactly does that mean? And whenever you see a study published about weight loss, they talk about one group of patients being on a diet, but most studies never provide specifics about what exactly that person is eating, mostly because it's really hard to track exactly what someone is eating all the time. Many presume that a diet is cutting calories, but caloric restriction by itself does not result in sustained weight loss because what you're eating has a lot to do with it, more so or much more so compared to how much you're eating. Because, for example, 2,000 calories of Oreos and Doritos exerts different metabolic and hormonal effects compared to 2,000 calories of broccoli, avocado, and salmon. 1 in 4 American adults go on a diet to lose weight every year. The ads you see everywhere: new year, new you, beach season coming soon, are you ready? Most are not successful. Regardless, everybody touts their own diet. Everyone touts that their diet's the best, right? So you have keto, vegan, Ornish, paleo, Mediterranean, Japanese. There are plenty of studies to document that each and every one of these diets fare better than the standard American diet or the Western diet. However, with the exception of the Mediterranean diet, there's very little evidence to document that one does better than another. In an attempt to determine which diet was best, there was a 2007 study. It's called the A to Z study, or the A to Z weight loss study, that looked at 4 separate diets. It looked at the Atkins diet, which is a high fat, low carb, the Learn diet, which is low calorie, the Ornish, which is very low fat, high fiber, and then the Zone, which is low processed carbs, and there's also lean protein. So those are the 4 different diets that they're looking at. This study demonstrated a very important point in that all of the diets worked, but only for 2 months. At that point, they stopped working because most people weren't vigilant enough to actually stay on it, and they slowly slipped back into their original eating habits. Now, the author of that study, Christopher Gardner, he followed this up with another study in 2018 called the Diet Fit Study, which looked at a low-fat diet versus a low-carb diet. Specifically, the low-fat diet consisted of 48% carbohydrate and 29% fat, even though technically a low-fat diet should be less than 20% fat. Now, in the group who was on the low-carb diet, they were eating 30% carbs and 45% fat, even though a true low-carb diet should be less than 25% carbs. Regardless, the study showed that it didn't matter which diet you were on, low fat or low carb, as long as you ate real, meaning whole foods, meaning unprocessed foods, and you didn't revert back to eating processed food. Now, on average, whether it's low carb or low fat in this study, they actually lost equal amounts of weight. What did these diets have in common? They were both high in fiber and low in sugar, which is exactly what happens when you're eating unprocessed food. So yes, when weight loss companies are selling people these diets that consist of highly processed food, even if it is smaller portions, because it's highly processed food, it's a scam because in the long run, they don't work. Dieting in this sense, with caloric restriction of highly processed food in the form of prepackaged meals, it does not work in the long run. In fact, in May of this year, Jenny Craig filed for bankruptcy. Even Weight Watchers knows that what works best in the weight loss game is the weight loss drugs, and that's why they purchased the telehealth startup so that they can start prescribing people the new weight loss drugs, things like Wegovy and Mounjaro. In order for us to lose weight, we have to get our insulin levels down and improve our insulin sensitivity in our body. Insulin is a hormone made by our pancreas, and it exerts all kinds of effects. One of which is to actually tell the hypothalamus part of our brain that you're full. So when your hypothalamus becomes less sensitive to that insulin, you end up becoming hungrier and you have worsening of your cravings. When it comes to our diet, there's a spectrum of macronutrient compositions, meaning carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, to choose from. With various diets, there's vegan, there's flexitarian, there's pescatarian, Mediterranean, paleo, low carb, and then there's keto, which is very low carb. They all work to get our insulin levels down as long as you're eating real food. That's because real food is unprocessed, which is to say that it's by default low in sugar and high in fiber. And this is what lowers our insulin and improves our body's sensitivity to insulin, meaning it lowers insulin resistance. So it's true that each person has different genetic predisposition, different epigenetics, and different gut flora, meaning different gut microbiomes. So specific diets might work better for some compared to others. But the overriding theme, regardless of the specific diet that you're on, is to eat real whole food that is unprocessed or minimally processed, because that is what gets our insulin levels down and improves our insulin sensitivity. For example, let's say you're on a vegan diet, but that vegan diet is highly processed. So for example, let's say you're eating Doritos, Oreo cookies, and Coca-Cola. Well, that's going to increase our insulin and worsen insulin resistance. But a vegan diet that consists of avocados, spinach, and quinoa will have the opposite effect. What about a keto diet that consists of sausage, pepperoni, and hot dogs? So this is a very highly processed version of keto diet. Well, you're still going to be very low carb and very low in sugar, but you're still going to develop worsening insulin resistance because of the excess saturated fats like palmitate that end up generating inflammation in the body. And you get decreased responsiveness of the cell membrane to insulin-mediated actions through a decrease in binding affinity. But if you're eating a keto diet consisting of avocados, nuts, seeds, salmon, and lean chicken breast, well, your body will be super sensitive to insulin, and your insulin levels will be super low, which is a good thing. The most important aspect of improving your insulin is what you are eating, but there are other things that help improve insulin. When you're eating, as in intermittent fasting, does it as well. So does exercise. And yes, the new GLP-1 agonist drugs like semaglutide, which is Ozempic and Wegovy, as well as tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro, do they improve insulin resistance? Absolutely. Now some say, well, but these drugs, these GLP-1 agonist drugs, don't they raise your insulin levels? Here's the interesting thing. These GLP-1 agonists, they actually tell your pancreas to make more insulin. So maybe you think this is a bad thing, but it's not, because over time, these drugs actually lower your insulin levels. Take a look at this study of tirzepatide, which was published in New England Journal of Medicine in July of 2022. You'll notice here that the fasting insulin levels were dropping as people were taking higher and higher doses of the drug. So even at the lowest dose in this study at 5 milligrams, people had significantly lower fasting insulin levels. And as you increase the dose, the fasting insulin levels became lower and lower. And that also correlated with the degree of weight loss. So if GLP-1 drugs tell the pancreas to make more insulin, why do the fasting levels actually go down? Because this drug, it curbs appetite and cravings, so people end up eating less food, particularly less sugar and less refined carbohydrates. But of course, these drugs are hard to get, they're expensive, and most insurance plans don't cover them. But what with we're doing at our weight loss clinic, we can help you get access to them without costing an arm and a leg, and I'll provide a link right here if that's something that you're interested in. And if you want to know more about the GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic and Mounjaro, you could also check out this video right here.